Okay, this talk is about gaining perspective on ending the family court racket, which is something should be near and dear to every one of us throughout the nation. It's very encouraging to see people from all over this nation coming to our capital in regard to this problem. I would like to remind those who are here of some of the responsibilities that we have, which are to the people who are not here. There are many people who would love to be here supporting us the 17th to the 20th of this month in this Million Parent March, who cannot be here because they have become so impoverished by the judicial corruption which is rampant in the family court system. Also, there are other people to whom we have a responsibility. The great unwashed, the people throughout this nation who are unfamiliar with this rampant judicial corruption. This has been cited as the #1 problem in the United States. It has affected so many people, as our previous speaker just pointed out. So we have a responsibility to educate the public, to inform them, which will give rise to public scrutiny and public pressure to put the crooked judges in jail. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. That, I believe, is the nitty-gritty of this movement. That should, in my view, and I've been in this for 22 years, the mission of the family rights movement. If you examine all of the atrocities and all of the abominations that have been inflicted upon millions of Americans, you will find out that all of this comes from the illicit court orders that are issued by the crooked judges in the family court system. They are illicit orders because every time they violate the rights of a citizen or even a non-citizen, they are committing a felony, and they are not being prosecuted for those felonies. This is absolutely tragic and has been tragic for the American people for decades. So how does that happen? We're going to talk about that today. How do we put these crooks in jail? I'm a member of the Inventors Network of the Carolinas. Inventors are essentially problem-solving people. Inventors have a knack for looking at a complex problem and seeing the crux of the matter. So what is really causing all of this difficulty? And so this is probably the means by which I have come to the conclusions that I have. Many of us will remember when we were in school that we were taught the first step in the scientific method is to define a problem, okay? Identify this problem. What is it exactly? And that's really the only way to solve about any problem. Now, what has happened, and I'm going to read something to you. I'm going to read the law to you. This is United States law. In particular, U.S. Code Title 18, Section 242, which is extremely pertinent to this matter. I am reading, deprivation of rights under color of law. Section 242 of Title 18 makes it a crime for a person acting under any color of law, of any law, to willfully deprive a person of a right or privilege protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. For the purpose of Section 242, acts under color of law include acts not only done by federal, state, or local officials within their local authority, but also acts done beyond the bounds of that official's lawful authority. If the acts are done while the official is purporting to or pretending to act in the performance of his or her official duties. Persons acting under color of law with the meaning of this statute include police officers, prison guards, and other law enforcement officials, as well as judges, care providers in public health facilities, and others who are acting as public officials. It is not necessary that the crime be motivated by animus toward the race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin of the victim. The offense is punishable by a range of imprisonment up to a life term or the death penalty, depending upon the circumstances of the crime and the resulting injury, if any. That is the law. That is the law. It is pretty concise. It is easy to understand. Anybody who can't understand that should ask a 10-year-old to read it to them and explain it to them. So these people are extremely guilty because they violate people's rights with the regularity of breathing. They do not hesitate for 1 second. So the myth that has been promoted that judges have absolute immunity is as phony as the $3 bill. Federal law clearly shows that notion to be completely false. However, many have been led to believe that and have had their efforts misdirected. I have seen a lot of that for 22 years. This nation needs a countrywide movement by the American people to indict, prosecute, and incarcerate the crooked judges in the so-called family courts and their accomplices for their crimes against the American people. That should be our mission. That's the reason why we should be here. We should be collectively demanding that. We should be demanding justice of our government. It is my hope that our presence here in D.C. and our mission in the family rights movement will be exactly that. Enforce the law. Prosecute crooked judges should be our collective demand. There is no legitimate reason why the law should not be enforced. There is every reason to enforce the law. The damage from those crimes upon our country and individually to millions of Americans is absolutely horrendous. In the 1990s, I began referring to this enormous social carnage as the American Holocaust. I have also called it the American Nightmare. Many victims of the rampant judicial corruption in the so-called family courts have concerned themselves primarily with peripheral issues. Many of them complain endlessly about their own personal situation, about what the principal said, and about what a cop said, or how terrible the personalities are of the DSS or CPS workers, and how unfairly the CPS agents have been to them. Essentially, all of the damage which has been inflicted upon so many Americans has arisen from illicit court orders issued by the crooked judges. Those are orders that violate the rights of American citizens. It's the judges' fault. The crooked judges enable essentially all of the abominations. CPS has the kids because they were given the kids by crooked family court judges who violated the rights of the parents and the child. It's the judges. If you were walking down the sidewalk in front of your neighbor's house and he let his pit bull dog out of the front door and sick the dog on you, do you think it's the fault of the dog who mauled you? It's the fault of the dog's owner. What is your analysis of this situation? Your kid was coming home from school and passed in front of your neighbor's house. The wind blew his spelling test into the neighbor's yard. The neighbor, Mr. Trigger Happy, quickly drew his .45 and shot your kid dead. Do you think your child's murder is the fault of the gun? Do you think your best response is to sue the gun manufacturer? It's the neighbor's fault. Do you think you should sue the neighbor? Would it not be more sensible for the murderer to be criminally indicted and prosecuted for his crime? There is a widespread misunderstanding of what the problem is, even among FRAs, meaning family rights activists and advocates. The vast majority think that what has happened to them is a matter of misunderstanding of their case, overreaching, or unfairness by the judge. The FRAs have been led to believe by the moles, lawyers, and judges that the judges act against them in legally acceptable ways, that the judges are simply using their legitimate discretion, and that they have absolute immunity. Those people think that repeated filing of motions and appeals will make things right for them. They entertain the notion that if they file just one more time and dot a few more I's and cross a few more T's, they will receive justice. That is a very incorrect assumption, which is based upon the idea that the judges involved are good, honorable people who have a propensity to do the right thing in accordance with the law. That is a very false and costly mistake. Going along with that point of view and approach has cost the American people enormously. In reality, to use legal terms, the judges are habitual criminals engaged in a continuous crime. For them and their accomplices, it has been a very lucrative racket. They have received hundreds of billions of dollars, which has been stolen from the Social Security Trust Fund to fund their child trafficking racket. Realizing that, it is not surprising to me why politicians have been saying for years that the Social Security Trust Fund is running out of money. They have been saying that the younger generations will probably not receive any of their retirement money. When young people find that out, they should be totally incensed. The crooked judges should be criminally indicted and prosecuted for their crimes against the American people. So who is going to bring criminal charges against the crooked judges? It has been clearly seen over and over that the judges over the crooked judges in the family courts protect the crooked judges. In so doing, those judges become accomplices after the fact. They become guilty of obstruction of justice, dereliction of duty, malfeasance, and misfeasance. So it can easily be seen that judiciary is extremely rotten or corrupt. For decades, we have only received injustice from the judicial system. There are three branches in our government: the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. The American people have made no progress in dealing with this problem by pleading to or begging the judiciary to do the right thing. They are crooks, and crooks will be crooks. Some people have spent much time and effort seeking to persuade or cajole legislators in the legislative branch to pass some new laws to make things better. In reality, there is already law which should be used to prosecute the crooked judges. So any new laws would not be necessary. Also, getting anything at all passed through a legislative body is far easier said than done. By the time any such initial effort would go through the meat grinder of compromise which pervades legislative bodies, whatever came out the other end would be so watered down that it would be of very little value. So spinning our wheels in attempts to persuade legislators is extremely unfruitful. Another inadequacy of seeking reform is that even if something is successfully tweaked somewhat with a new law, that would only help a little going forward. It would do nothing for the existing or past victims. It wouldn't bring anybody's kids back or put any crooked judges in prison, undo their crimes, or address any prior felonies committed. There are two solutions. And these two solutions to this monumental problem are: one, public pressure. I know about that. I've had experience with that. It works really, really well in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, which is a very big county, one of the biggest population centers in the United States. But that's only one county. That happened in 2000. The entire court system changed 180 degrees from a cesspool of judicial corruption to a paragon of judicial virtue. Out of 100 counties in North Carolina, it's the only one that's straight. And I'm told from people in the court system that people in the other counties think they're weird because they follow the law. It is the only county in North Carolina in which a man and woman can go into divorce court as equals. All of the rest of them are just as crooked as Mecklenburg used to be. So that's the public pressure. What really brought that about is I published a local newspaper in the Charlotte area for 41 years. And when that happened to me in 1995, I unleashed an unrelenting barrage of editorials and articles against the corrupt court system. I had 5 judges in my case before it was over with in 1997. It only ended it for me after only 2 years. I put a lot of heat on these people. And I had 5 judges. I named the judges. I published in my paper the laws they were breaking, the crimes they were committing, and gave an estimate of about how long they should go to prison. the initial judge, some years later, told the staff at Central Piedmont Community College that I had ruined his career. And after he kicked me out of my house and did all the normal things that happens to everybody, okay, a couple of months later, I actually had an attorney who actually did something good for me, and he forced his hand and got the judge to write a court order that stated that he had acted against me without findings of fact, and he had acted against me without conclusions of law, so his prior order was therefore void. Okay, so whenever he would run for a higher office, Court of Appeals or whatever, I would publish that entire court order in my paper with the headline, Judge Fritz Mercer's signed confession that he violated the rights of publisher Don Rector. So after 2 years, they relented, and they signed, the last court order that was written in my case was written by me, signed by the fifth judge. She's the only one that didn't violate my rights. And I speculate that she told the rest of them, look, just give him what he wants and he will shut up. But wrong. I was never writing just for myself. I was writing for everybody, because I found out right away this was happening to people all over Mecklenburg County. It wasn't just me, some weird case. This weird case was happening to everybody. And so although this corruption has not been visited upon me since 1997, I've been active in this movement, and I know some of the people in this movement think that's commendable. So public opinion is very, very important. Public opinion is said to be the highest court in the land. When the people get together, and we've seen this in a lot of cases, people get what they want. When they get out and demand it, we get what we want. Okay? And that comes about from public education, enabling the general public, the media, and politicians to become aware of the twin rackets emanating from the so-called family courts generates public scrutiny and public pressure. You can use the handout, which is something I wrote February of last year, which Jody Mueller, I think, has handed to every legislator in Iowa and Texas and posted on all the bulletin boards and used by many people around the country. And it's something that Donald Trump liked on Facebook that I wrote this year called Travesty and Abomination. He actually liked it on Facebook, which wowed a lot of people. But so he's paying some interest to this, and he has literally received boxloads of letters from people I know in this movement regarding this matter. So he has a lot to go on. So those can be used for that the educational purpose. All right, that is why they were written. The handout prints beautifully on one sheet of paper, but back and front. Reading it transformed a totally uninformed person into one who is aware of and understands the problem and the legitimate legal solution. Public pressure can facilitate that solution. Absent public pressure, the crooked judges continue to ignore and violate the law. The second solution, and the most effective and quickest solution that could happen, lies with the executive branch, that third branch of government. That means Donald Trump. And that was pointed out in what he liked, the travesty and abomination. President Trump can sic his Attorney General and the Director of the FBI onto the crooked judges. In a 20-minute meeting with them, he can instruct them to immediately investigate the numerous claims he has received from American citizens that the crooked judges have violated their rights. He can tell them to indict and vigorously prosecute the judges who are guilty. If that 20-minute meeting takes place, it will be game, set, and match for the American people. That will be the beginning of the end of the American Holocaust. Now, there is presidential precedent for this. In the prior civil rights movement led by Dr. Martin Luther King, it was the executive branch who saved the day. President Dwight David Eisenhower sent the National Guard to support the people, followed by John Fitzgerald Kennedy, who sicked his brother, the Attorney General, the Justice Department, and the FBI on the people who were oppressing the black folks in the South primarily. And he was followed by Lyndon Baines Johnson, who did the same thing. And a lot of success was achieved, from which we can benefit. It'll be a lot easier for us than it was for them. Yeah, you watch the movie Selma. Yeah, that is a learning device for us. We need to do exactly what they did. And Martin Luther King actually followed Mahatma Gandhi and the suffragettes. It wasn't original with him. He did what works, and that is exactly what we should do. We should do what works. Okay, we should pressure President Trump to rise as a champion of the American people, as he said he was going to do in his inaugural address. He said, "Never again will the American people be ignored." For that to happen, we need to be heard, and that's why we're here. The family rights community should hold public demonstrations like we're doing now to urge President Trump to have that meeting with his Attorney General and the Director of the FBI. If he does so, his legacy as a great president will be ensured. And I can assure you from conversation with leaders throughout this movement, if he does that, we will have his back, because the Clintonites have been attacking him 24/7 ever since he got elected, even before he took office. We can have his back. We can support him. There are a lot of people. The people who are here the next few days will be a tiny tip of the iceberg, because this problem exists throughout America. So I hope that is what we are here to achieve, to enforce the law and prosecute crooked judges. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow and maybe singing and playing with you.
Your name, please?
My name is Don Refty. I'm from North Carolina.